Okay, so good afternoon. I am Enzo Budiarjo, and this is Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday at 3 o'clock to discuss what's going on in the smart building space. The list of panelists are available on mondaylive.org. Just as a reminder that the views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. Please do post comments and questions on the Q&A and the Zoom tool, and complete the survey at the end. The slide deck that I'm showing you is also on mondaylive.org, so if you want any of the links that's shown here, that's where you should head. So just as a reminder again, our focus this month is digital twin. So this is the third show of this month on digital twin. And the agenda today, we're just going to have our normal chit chat about what's going on. And then we're going to have three guests actually today to get a perspective from technology vendors in terms of their thoughts about digital twin. And hopefully leaving quite a bit of time for questions and comments and discussions. Some slides that the team has put together here. John Petsy talking about data center construction pipeline growing in 21, which is great. Refers to this thing called relative byte address, which I have no idea what that is. Relative byte address square foot of data. Well, maybe I'll get educated. Scott is talking about INvidia building a giant virtual metaverse. I'm sure we'll give him an opportunity to chat about that. Anna talking about grocery stores of the future, and Mark talking about flying cars and hyperloops and other stuff that didn't pan out in 2020. Is that because of the pandemic or because they weren't supposed to happen? With that, I'm going to bring people back on. Hello, Therese. And who wants to start? Anno?
Sure. The article on grocery stores of the future, it's a Cushman Wakefield article, I think. Interesting. The whole point about it is really about how even during COVID, the rate of increase of digital transformation, right? In that, even though it was a crazy year, it did drive a lot of digital transformation and digital innovation stuff that, in areas that we didn't think. And one of the interesting ones is the potential of what that digital transformation and the changes in the way that we do shopping, online, not online, and hybrid versions thereof, and the impact that that's going to have on grocery stores of the future, grocery store builders already, which is actually a growth industry, and they're looking at how to change layouts, how to deal with pickups better, how to deal with what they call micro shopping experiences. So really interesting article, just the impact of the change, of the acceleration of simple things like shopping. So that our real estate industry is having similar thoughts and ideas.
Great, thank you. Mark, talk about flying cars and your disappointment, and you're not flying to Kansas City today.
Exactly. So what I found interesting about this was basically tech predictions that didn't pan out in 2020. And for example, some of the ones that kind of stood out for me were the computer chips would consume no energy. That did not happen. 9 out of 10 people over the age of 6 will own a mobile phone. That didn't happen, except though I think some of my colleagues here are just over that age of 6, and we all have phones. So, I'll just say it like that. The first Hyperloop ride was supposed to take place. We know that did not happen. And this, one of the other ones that stood out for me was Google Cloud business would overcome their advertising revenue. That did not happen either. So when I saw this, I go, all right, so what would we say in our industry? What was expected and didn't pan out? I'm not going to answer that question, but just the viewers, the listeners, and the team, think about it, and maybe in the future we could have a discussion about that. But I just, we hear a lot of hype in our industry, and a lot of the times it doesn't pan out either. So I guess we're not alone.
So were those because it in any way contributed because of to COVID, the fact that it didn't happen, or you don't know? It's not.
The article did not say that. I don't think COVID had anything to do with it. At least that's what I got from it.
Okay, great. And who else? Scott. Metaverse.
Yeah, so this article was incredibly interesting, and given the fact that I was born in 70 and a kid of the 80s, it flashbacks of 1984 and all of this, what's the world going to look like in the future? And the author of the article, Jensen Huang, NVIDIA's CEO, I just want to read this passage real quick. So he's talking about predicting that people will be able to go in and out of two worlds through wormholes. And although it's unclear exactly how that would be done. So there's some very interesting pieces in the article that talk about more of that deep learning state that we're all trying to get to. So I definitely think it's worthwhile reviewing that. But this whole meta universe, they're talking about creating an environment that is 1,000 times larger than some of the largest cities in the world from a digital perspective. And what are the advantages of having that digital experience before we actually relate it to the physical world? And again, that's what I understand the concept of a digital twin and the advantages of a digital twin. And maybe next week or at some point, we'll talk about the triplet scenario. But there's some interesting information. I still think it's quite a ways out in the future. But it reminded me of 1984 in my childhood. So.
I recently listened to a presentation by somebody from Epic that was basically saying the same thing. But obviously, he was coming from a perspective of gaming, which is also interesting because you're going from gaming into this metaverse that you're talking about.
They made a movie about that, right? Ready Player One. That was all about that.
Yeah, and I think that was funny because are we really that far from it, or are we already there in some ways? We're just not really contextualizing it thusly.
Right.
Bill, I think you're onto something. I think there's a lot of it exists in many forms. It's just we got to have somebody bring it together and connect it and truly make it the experience that everyone talks about, because that's the piece that's missing, I think, today. We still don't have the actual experience, the contextual piece.
And since we're talking movies, that will mean that we'll get into The Matrix, right?
Get into? What do you mean get into?
Right.
Please.
We're in the Matrix.
Come on.
Yeah, he's gonna leave it.
You don't think this hand is real, do you?
Good point. John Petsy did put us up a slide, but he's going to be late. He did send his apologies. He's actually flying, I think, right now, so he'll join us later. So any other thoughts or comments from anyone before we jump into Digital Twins?
I had a thought, just a thought, zero relationship to reality. When you're scanning the internet and magazines and publications and so forth, is there an ever so subtle shift from what's the new normal in buildings and employees and all that to, okay, how are we going to get back? I'm seeing an ever so subtle shift. Like we're already 13 months in going, all right, we're going back. Now, how are we going to do it? No relationship to reality, but I'm starting to see that kind of stuff.
I haven't specifically noticed that, but I think we're all trying to sort of figure out what's next.
Yeah. I've
The
seen a
only
few
one-
articles to that. Go ahead, Anna.
I'm sorry, Bill, but yeah, someone sent me an email this morning, just a list of shows, events coming back starting in the September timeframe, getting into 2022. You know, there's a calendar forming, right, that people are starting to look forward to.
Anno RIFMA has announced that they're holding their conference in Charlotte, and that's in June. So
That's in June.
it's well before September.
Mm.
I'm
Yep.
surprised. Yeah,
So
because
the-
I was just going to the grocery store, you still have to wear masks like you would at Walmart or any of these other places. And I mentioned to the information desk, so is anything going to change here? You know, I got both my shots, I got my card, you know, when can I take my mask off? And the answer is it's a government issue. So until the governor of Virginia decide it's okay to walk around without a mask. So how are you going to hold conferences in a traditional way? Or is everybody going to a conference going to have a mask on the whole time?
Or you're going to have your COVID ID that says I've been vaccinated.
No, because they're
But
already
no,
faking
Mark, you're
those.
not getting the point. That's not enough to have your COVID ID. You've got to also wear the mask because of this fear factor that's been
Gotcha.
added
Yeah,
to
but
it.
so
Gotcha.
here's my question,
But-
Steve. So Taiwan, the reason they had like 0 deaths is when SARS or whatever, something happened 9 or 12 or 13 years ago,
Yep.
they just masked up and kept wearing them. So maybe it's a personal choice from here on out. You just wear your mask. I don't know if I'm shaking hands much more. I'm down with the fist bump.
Yeah, right.
I don't
Yeah,
know. Maybe it's a personal choice.
I actually agree with you, Bill. I mean, one of the impacts, of course, was the flu season. Impact has been so low because everyone's masked up, and that's something, again, in my experience working in Singapore and the APAC region, half the population's masked up most of the time just because, you know, and they're happy just to fist pump you, and that's just normal. I can see a time in flu season I'll put a mask on because I can't trust
Well,
any of you buggers.
You just brought up a point. There's some statistics out that say that our flu season wasn't as bad or is not going to be as bad. And I apologize, I don't know which one, because everybody's wearing masks.
Right.
And washing hands and socially
Yeah.
distancing and all
Yep.
that.
All right,
It's a good trash and trinket. Put it into the marketing trash and trinket category. Keep ordering.
Forever a marketeer, Therese.
Market having everybody's brand across the face. It's like great billboard space.
That's true. That's true.
And also what that'll do is that'll keep you from being tracked by Big Brother or with the new CCTV.
Yeah. All right, let us move on. So we are going to be talking digital twins, and we have 3 guests from these 3 companies. We have Lewis Morgan. I'm going to bring them on one by one onto as a panelist, and Marty Chobot, I think I get that right, and John Geeter. Where are you, John? There you go. Okay, so welcome to the 3 of you. I'll let you introduce each one in turn, but we basically want to have a conversation, trying to sort of get a sense of why you in the digital twin, what interests you in digital twin, and what your perspectives are. And for that, we basically have 4 questions, and I've already sent these to you, so they shouldn't be a surprise. What is a digital twin for you and your company? How is it different from other terms that we've gotten used to, such as BAS and IoT and other things? And also, what is it to you and your channel and building owners? Because we're talking specifically, obviously, about buildings in Monday Live. And then the last question, which is an interesting question, is how many digital twins are there? So let's see how you're going to respond to all of that. I'm going to stop sharing. Welcome, everybody. Luis, why don't you start, if you don't mind? Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So introduce yourself and give us your perspective on those questions.
Okay, so I have about 5 minutes. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, So anyways, thank you. I'd like to thank John for introducing me to the Monday Live group and to Anto for inviting me. So I'm really happy to share what we've done so far with our digital twin journey, which started many years ago, and what we've been able to do with our clients so far. So for those who don't know Archidata, we manage spaces in 2D and 3D. And we also manage the location of equipment inside a building. The data is updated on an ongoing basis. We use CAD and Rivet files to update it. So we're the only solution that is integrated, meaning we have a plan room where we archive everything. We have an FM system, and we also have a BIM for operations tool, which is in itself a digital twin tool. So our solution is enterprise-wide. Operations, development, and asset management groups use Archidata because it's one platform using the same data. Our clients are large property owners. So our commercial clients, they manage all asset classes: office, malls, industrial, multi-res. We have corporate clients, governments, healthcare, and universities. So according to market studies, we're a leader in BIM, which is basically a digital twin, and facility management. So like we have three main tools. Like I said, we have the plan room where we archive everything. We have the building dashboard, which organizes the data extracted from AutoCAD and Rivet files. And we structure it by building, floor, units, rooms, workstations, and project zones. That's also very important. It's very visual, and it allows users to see floor plans and data in a user-friendly interface. And then we have a 3D interactive model, which is positioned on a world mapping platform. You can use S3 or BIM, but the fact is we can put the 3D on any platform. So our added value is to keep the space data in other property management software up to date and to convert CAD drawings to IFC BIM. And that's a big thing. So we're helping clients into the digital transformation. And we also provide other system APIs for floor plans and 3D of buildings. So let's say you have the data, you have the building systems, but you want to, spatialize them in the building. Well, we can provide that. You can say, we're experts in the space digital twin. And then our latest tool is the Smart Building IoT 4D Viewer. So we bring data from other systems via an API into our 3D interactive tool, the digital twin, the space digital twin. And this is for building operators to make sense of the building data and to map it on the floor and predict trends. And also for tenants, so they can provide a location-based feedback. And it also helps with work orders because it's not just, you have to go repair something on the floor. You actually know exactly where it is on the floor. So for us, a digital twin, of course, is a virtual representation of a space, of an equipment, of sensors and building systems. We also add data to that because what we do is we give a color to the value of the type of data. So then we're able to publish the values, the colors on the floor plans and inside the digital twin. So our strategy is because we work with property owners that have diverse portfolios, and each property has diverse information, documents, and building systems. So it's sort of like not a mess, but we have to deal with a lot of different type of information. So our digital twin strategy has like three inputs. The first one are the drawings. Okay, it's either the building has AutoCAD drawings, scanned paper, or PDF. So we use that to produce the space digital twin. And then there's the data from the other building systems that are digital twins themselves. So for example, preventive maintenance will give us the equipment digital twin, but will also give us the data to know where the work orders are. SCADA will give us the data, from operations. And then the third input into our digital twin are the Rivet files, because now new builds, most of our clients have 98% AutoCAD, but the new builds are mostly in Rivet. So we also take the Rivet files at the end of the project to either generate the space digital twin or to add to what the client already has. So our strategy is to use all three at the same time to produce the space digital twin. So that way, we're covering everything. We don't miss anything.
Okay.
So, do I still have a little bit of time?
Just if you can address the questions.
Yeah, I'm coming
just
to
quickly address them, and then we can move on.
Okay, so once that we've updated the digital twin, then it's keeping up to date. So, we've got to make sure that the client has the processes to update the digital twins. Now, the big thing with landlords nowadays, they're saying, well, why should I invest in digital twins? So we always give them the following use cases. Well, to locate faulty equipment quickly, to provide building managers with an overview of the frequency of the type of interventions and work orders, to visualize the data coming from sensors, to visualize the distribution of energy consumption, and to easily locate problems. Right. So I think the most important thing is, convincing the landlords to invest in digital twins.
Okay.
So.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Lise. Marty, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Anto. Yeah, so I'm Marty Chobot. I'm with INvicara, and we provide a digital twin platform called Twinit. So just rolling into it, what is a digital twin to me? I think first and foremost, a digital twin really is a data model or a knowledge graph of the building, right? So buildings are so incredibly complex. They're just so different. I mean, and you look across a portfolio, there's just so much variability, different BMS systems, different IoT, different management types of applications. And so what we've done is, recognizing that complexity, is we've tried to build a platform that is very open and flexible, that allows you to model the building as it exists in reality, right? So, however, there's really no schema to our database per se, right? It's a schemaless database, and we provide tools for our partners to come in and modify that schema to build bespoke solutions, but in a low code way, right? Without, heavy coding and that sort of thing. So a digital twin to me, first and foremost, is a data model. One of the ways that we seed a digital twin, or we kind of create the foundation for one, is through an integration with BIM, right? A model is not required, right? It's a handy tool for visualization. And I think one of the things, I think one of the misconceptions, one of my jokes is, if you ask, 5 different people, what's a digital twin, you get 10 different answers, right? So, I mean, it's like, well, what is it really? But, BIM can be an important part of it. Visualization is one of the important things you want to do. But what I really see as core is sort of the aggregation of these different systems and these different data sources to take advantage of potentially I'm going to steal my boss's term, the combinatorial value, right, of these systems. So if we can combine information from, like, one of the examples I use is, let's say you've got a BMS that, it's got temperature sensors, of course, right? But maybe it doesn't know anything about the CO2 in the space, right? Well, on the other hand, you've got an IoT system over here that measures indoor air quality, right? And it knows all about the CO2. Well, what if you could join those together, right? And leverage data from that CO2 sensor to say, hey, and tell the BMS, hey, look, something's going on here. CO2 is getting high. Maybe you ought to open up that fresh air damper and get some more fresh air in that space, right? So those are the kinds of things that we really look for, And to address the second question about, how's it different from other tech terms like a BAS or like an IoT, or I guess CRE meant commercial real estate tools, prop tech. We really try to, our goal, our vision is to be a a system that can connect to those other systems and bring that data together in a way that's relevant for the owner, right? And for that asset class, different asset classes are going to have different use cases. Different owners are going to manage things in different ways. So that's kind of how I see digital twins evolving. The value to us, to our channel and our building owners, well, for us, world domination is clearly, but I'm going to step away from the dark side. No, I'm just kidding. Let's start with the customers. And I just echo a lot of things that Luis said. I think, what we're trying to do is to make the building more efficient, right? So how can we leverage tools like we've OEM'd SkySpark into our platform, right? As one of our primary means of connecting to building systems. So how can we use that data about equipment performance? How can we get energy data? How can we get all of these other things to do things like, well, I'm working on a project right now for a building in Dublin, and my client said, I want to make this the most energy efficient building in Dublin, right? I mean, I was like so stoked when I heard that. I'm like, you're the perfect client. I love you, man. Luckily I'm over here and he's over there, so I didn't give him a hug or anything. I didn't make it weird. So energy efficiency is a big one. For me, sustainability, there's this concept called Ikigai, where you find your purpose in life, right? For me, I've always been very interested in sustainability, I've always been an outdoorsy guy. This is finally a way. I'm really psyched about what I'm doing right now, because I see I'm able to align something that's meaningful to me personally with a valuable financial service I can deliver.
Great.
And then how many digital twins out there, man? I think that was a trick question. My 5 minutes are up, but
give me an answer on that one.
Right. I will say, like, one thing I will say real quick, and then I'll wrap up, but is that I think there's a digital twin isn't necessarily going to be one application or one product or one system, right? I think to really realize the value, it's going to have to be interconnected systems. And you may have a twin that represents a certain aspect like space management, right? And occupancy. Right. Yeah. And then you might have a twin over here that represents another aspect of the building, and it's all about bringing it all together. So
that's great.
It. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Marty. John, over to you, over the Atlantic.
Yes, indeed. You can tell by the tenor of my window, I'm rather closer to Dublin than everybody else, I think. So thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm John Gita. I am CTO of a company called Jitsuin. And at Jitsuin, what we make is a service and a bunch of associated products and enabling technologies that help to bring security and trustworthiness to connected digital technologies. So not confined to digital twins as such, but give an idea of where we came from. My past is all recently aerospace and defense. Prior to that, large enterprise and finance. So I've been doing cybersecurity and crypto since the 90s, protecting things like the EMV payments networks, and then onto online banking, and thereafter onto things like something of the order of 2.5 billion Android mobile phones with embedded technologies. And then on to stuff like the smart grid, so UK smart grid, various airports, drone fleets, self-driving cars, that kind of stuff. And doing so, and now within Jitsuin, doing so in recognition that technology moves faster than confidence. And even though we kind of know how to do stuff and we kind of can connect systems together, to the earlier chit chat theme of where's my flying car? Well, yes, of course, we all watched Back to the Future back in 1988, and they all told us that 3 years ago we would have flying cars. So why don't we? Well, I have to say partly the reason why we don't is because we don't actually need them. But another reason why not is because to create a system of that complexity and that import, it's not only necessary to be able to build the components and share the information between them that's necessary to drive it. In the words of so many futurists, so-called, data is the new oil. So if not only to fuel all of these things with the data that they need, the next hurdle you need to get over is the one of the risk operators and the insurance companies and the regulators and everybody else who looks at your great conference demonstration and says how wonderful it could be. Oh yeah, but no, I'm not going to trust that. I can't deal with it. So what we look to do is to bring, once the connectivity is in place, to be able to bring trustworthiness and defensible operations in the context of a current contemporary organization in their current contemporary regulatory, insurance, or legal context, and allow them to move at their own pace, which is lamentably slower than the Monday Live audience's pace, but move at their own pace towards that future that we all know is so possible, if only they can have the confidence to do so. So if only one thing, since, I agree with the previous two speakers on basically everything that's said. So just to spark some debate, I will disagree with only one thing from the last talk, which is world domination is the opposite of what we should be aiming to do. I think a huge problem in security and trustworthiness in particular, and a huge problem in moving the world forward as quickly and efficiently as it can go, is that we all grew up with this kind of winner takes all, kind of Wild West, kind of real estate stakes in the bag approach to internet back in the 90s, which meant that you grew these huge pillars and you grew these huge silos and you grew people who had basically all of the control in the world. And when we thought that we were going to go for the Internet of Things, and people decided that the way to build the Internet of Things was to start with the primitives and the technology of the internet, we had very rapid advancement in proofs of concept and Wired articles and all sorts of fancy dreams, but we had no real movement outside of the lab into real organizations. And the reason for that, I believe, is because the security of the internet is fundamentally based on the idea that people are islands and they are against everybody else, and everybody who's not you is an attacker. And what we need to build for real important use cases and real connected industry is a world and an understanding where everybody is a friend, but you need to be a critical friend. And everybody is kind of trustworthy, but you should trust but verify. And the way to make all of these things work is to allow people to exist in a community for mutual benefit, with a range of different specialist responsibilities and a range of opportunities which grow in step with each other. So not saying I'm going to be Facebook and everybody else is gone, but rather we're all going to provide a little bit of value to this ecosystem, and between us we will make the world an entirely better place. And that's what we try to do. Perhaps as pertinent as my day job in Jitsuin, where we provide those trustworthiness services, which we do on the basis of identifying the origin and the provenance and the lineage of data. So if you're bringing data into your automated systems, or you're bringing data into your models, or whatever it might be, we give you a traceable and defensible and auditable record of where that's been and who gave it to you and why it's a good idea to trust that stuff. So alongside that, I'm also the chair of the Security and Trustworthiness Working Group in the Digital Twin Consortium. So what I'm trying to do there, in keeping with everything else I've just said, in my kind of idealistic, dreamy world of everybody loving each other, is to bring a model there in the sort of standards organization, the outside organization, that gives a foundation of trustworthiness that means that the technologists and the futurists can meet the business people in the middle and actually go ahead and work. So what I try to do is bring all these things forward. Now to the questions. My answers to what is a digital twin to me, I don't know. Nobody does really.
Honest answer.
But I as I said, I spent many years trying to apply traditional industrial and internet security to non-traditional connected systems like drone fleets, like fighter jet construction models and things like that. Anything and everything is a digital twin. But I think it's important that if you are relying on some data in order to make some decision, that data should be reliable. And so if it happens to be that that data is about something which is fundamentally physical, then that's a digital twin, and you want to make sure that it's as close as possible. My answer to what is a value of a digital twin to me and my channel and to building owners, it's enormous, but I think we have to take it in steps. So everything we've said about buildings and efficiency and making the world a better place and having better environments and working systems, everything else. Some of what I did in my old aerospace times was looking at things like time and motion studies through large transit hubs. So how do we deal with a fire in a train station? How do we get everybody out? How do we make sure that when people are getting out, they don't get knocked off the platform and into a train? This stuff can be incredibly transformative. But if we jump straight to the amazing use cases, they just, we're not going to get there in one jump. So we need to make sure we're going to realize that value incrementally. And the other two questions, 2 and 4, I think the answer is the same. So what's, how is a digital twin different to IoT and so on? How many digital twins are there? I think the important answer to that is, again, there's either none or there are millions, because we've been designing oil platforms reliably and respectably in AutoCAD for at least 30 years. Equally, we don't have anything that really well matches in operation the current digital twin consortium definition, which is a good definition, but it's idealized. I think the important thing for me to realize is the popular coining at least, of the term digital twin from a 2016 paper was in the context of ensuring resilience in digital operations. Is the whole point of the paper where this thing came out said, if we are going to connect everything and automate our operations, we have to cope with the fact that the world changes around us, that system properties emerge, that components change, and our job now is not to write consistent linear code that does consistent linear things, but rather to write consistent deterministic processes that ensure consistent, reliable outcomes no matter what is happening. And so what is a digital twin to me? Well, it's anything that I can add that level of reliability, resiliency, trustworthiness, and security to that makes the world run better, faster, cheaper, more efficiently, without all of the risks of the internet that we've lived with for 30 years.
Wonderful.
I like that.
Well done, John.
Thanks very much, John.
You guys should know Anto's been looking for this answer. There's one digital twin. I haven't figured that out, but well done, John, and all of you.
Yeah, that last question is a bit of a trick question, because there is no right answer, and I would actually compare it to the internet, because there's only one internet, but there are many components that are connectable, right? That can seamlessly connect, and that's obviously Marty's comment went straight to that. So that was the what was behind that last question. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad I asked it. So put it out to the panel to.
So I've got 2 questions. This is Mark. So first question is this: as we've been having this discussion around digital twin this month and things that we all do in our respective jobs, we keep hearing a lot about BIM, all right, and digital twin. My question for the group, for the panelists, is can you have a successful digital twin implementation without BIM?
Yes.
In the context of buildings, presumably, is your question.
Buildings, yes, yes. Thank you, Anthony. Yes, buildings, yes.
I mean, I would say from our perspective, yes, because we're in the process of delivering several non-BIM digital twins. We typically get engaged. The visualization is very powerful, right? It really is. I'm not going to discount that, but really, I think at its heart, it's about the data model, and it's about the ability to aggregate and correlate data from multiple what were previously disparate sources to add additional value to the operations.
Luis, I think you were trying to answer, but you were muted. So.
Oh, sorry.
You're muted, Louis. You're muted. Okay. No, you're still muted. Let's continue.
By the way, Marty, we heard you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
And then the second question, while Luis is hopefully get unmuted, is this. When you're out speaking about the digital twin to building owners and operators and those folks, who are you addressing the concept of digital twins to?
Okay, I'm back now, I think.
Good.
We can hear you.
So the question is, who are you? Sorry, Mark, just ask the last part.
Oh, sure. So second question, Louise, is when you're out talking about your digital twin solutions and offerings or digital twin, who at the building owner operator level are you having these conversations with?
Okay, so mostly they're the building operators, which are, the property managers. Of course, we try to sell our solution, at the C-suite level. So there are two tracks. The first one on top is, okay, guys, you have to, we're 2021. I think it's time to do the digital transformation. So you try to talk to the people at C-suite, but then it's actually the building operators that use it. It's the building operators that want to see the data on energy efficiency. So two levels. And the first question, when you said, can we have a digital twin without having BIM? Well, we've been able to do it by converting CAD to 3D BIM. So, and we have to, because like I said earlier, the property owners, they don't have perfect Rivet. So, and like 5 years ago, they didn't even know what BIM was, even less digital twin. So it's been difficult.
Do you guys have an issue? Because I've done some stuff with buildings, but everything I do is about kind of trustworthiness of the use case. So the model's done, the twin's in place, then what do we do? Well, now we're looking at disputes or liabilities or insurance cover between, is it the landlord, is it the person interacting, is it the sublessee? So we deal at that kind of level. It's not the same thing, but do you have an issue that I struggle with, that you are fundamentally working with an operational use case, you're working with a kind of workaday business value use case, but because it's digital twin as opposed to building management, you end up kicked to the IT guys or the CISO or the Do you see that? Because I see that all the time, and it's like you get these people who have grown up effectively defending their fortress of email, and then they suddenly think they're responsible for also managing your building access and your fire suppression systems.
Yeah, I mean, I can say for sure in our engagements. So a lot of times, like as Louise said, we will be engaged by folks on the operations side, building operators, chief engineer of a single property. A lot of times we're also seeing now in organization that there's a, either in commercial real estate or even in some institutional portfolios, there are, digital strategy people, right? And they're more at the corporate level, and they have a remit of not just one building, but looking at efficiency across the portfolio. And so people in that organization tend to have more technical backgrounds, I think, perhaps than the building operator. So we find that we have to deal with both of those stakeholder groups.
What's nice is that 5 years ago, large real estate owners starting appointing chief innovation officers.
Yep.
So that helped tremendously. I mean, they get it. It's their job to get it, to connect the dots, because so many people in the organization were working in silos. Well, they have to connect now. And that's it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Thank God for them. Chief innovation officers. They're my new favorite friends.
Other comments from the group?
Yeah. So we have a Wednesday call to get ready for the Monday calls, and one of the points I made, and I'm curious how you guys think about this, is that I feel like digital twin is one of those industry terms looking for recognition and acceptance, and then along with that, success. So, in the building controls industry, we went from energy management to direct digital control to building automation and so on. So there was an evolution every 10 years. And I think, Louise, you made the comment that you used the term digital transformation. And I think that's, instead of trying to define what the heck digital twin is, because it is so almost unexplainable, because so much can be argued to be digital twin. Digital transformation, to me, having worked most recently in the IT industry, is all about trying to take processes that are inefficient and make them valuable and efficient. Okay. And I feel like when I just listen to the products you guys are developing, that's what's driving the value to the. So we are a construction oriented industry for the most part, people on this call, and we get very frustrated by the challenge of going from CapEx to OpEx, because there's so much opportunity to drive transformation in the operations of a business if they would only get out of their own way and let these kinds of technologies that the three of you are developing become adopted, because it would only help what we do. So I just curious, is the fight to make the legitimized digital twin, do you think that's worth trying to win that battle from a market perspective?
I believe it is, Steve. What we do with our clients is that sometimes they do, have construction projects. We want to be there upstream. We tell them, you've got to tell your construction company and your engineers and your architects that in the Rivet file, we need this level of information. So then there's a transition between construction and operations, because lots of times the operations guys, they get PDFs, of drawings or so we make sure that the information is in the Rivet file when it's given to the owner at the end of the project. So yes.
And I would second that as well. We actually have some BIM conditioning tools that allow you to classify the model elements so that the model speaks the language of the downstream digital systems. Otherwise BIM can just be a bag of stuff, right? You don't know if that element is an air handler or a door or a chiller or what, right? So classification is hugely important. Then we also have some data validation tools. And all of this is kind of wrapped into the whole information management process. So providing the services to shepherd model data through design, construction, the various subcontractors and stakeholders. There's a lot of these are concepts from the UK, but like the idea of an OIR and an AIR, and the employer's information requirements, the asset information requirements, making those clear and making it part of the contractual deliverables for each stakeholder on the project team is really helpful if we can get engaged prior to design. So
and Marty, you're right about the classification, because most of the classification and the Rivet files during the project are done for construction and not for operations. So they're not named the same thing.
That's absolutely right.
I'm tempted to I'm tempted to push back a little bit on that, because, and taking in also Pete Scanion's question, I've worked a lot in digital transformation as well, and a huge problem I found with digital transformation in organizations with any kind of budget is, well, there's two big problems. One is that it's not really digital transformation. What they do is they take their existing processes and business and just put it on a computer, and that's not digital transformation. That's just sort of recording stuff differently. But the other is that digital transformation is actually very intrusive. There's not really a middle ground, unless you do doing it on a computer thing, which I think is pointless. You have to really upend your business, and you have to take all of your kind of project requirements and have it data driven. If you have data driven project requirements, then your budgeting process is different, and your department sizes are now no longer reliable, and everything changes. And so digital transformation is actually quite intrusive, whereas Now, I used to have a problem with digital twin as a term back in 2018, 2017 or so. I used to have a problem with it because it seemed to be so perfect. And it said, digital twin is an exact representation of your thing. So in the building concept, okay, so I go into a building, I kick a hole in a dry wall. How quickly does that hole in the drywall show up in the twin model? It can't possibly. You can't get that level of fidelity. But actually now, as we've matured and we've had more dialogue and we've come into the DTC and we've done things, we have quite mature concepts for assessing how reliable and how good your digital twin model is. And we say, well, it might not be brilliant, but you know how not brilliant it is. So you can now make a risk assessment as to whether this thing actually fits your business model or not, whether it's doing what you need it to do. There's a great, Peter and Shelwick, at the very launch of the Digital Twin Consortium, had a great little, very short article where he said, what is a digital twin and which one do you pick? Well, it depends what you're hiring it to do, because this is just a tool like any other, which is simply doing a job for you. Is it good enough at that job? Great, go for it.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
So
right.
I actually think that the digital twin move overcomes that huge big bang problem, which is not a technology problem, it's a social problem. It's a whole bunch of middle managers and directors trying to protect their budgets and not do work in a different way. Whereas with an incremental approach and a kind of conscious move to digital twin as your vehicle towards ultimate digital transformation, that's how you answer Pete Scannion's question is, well, now you can do it on a piecemeal basis. We deal with digital twins of containers. We deal with digital twins in my business of 55-gallon drums. And that you can work at that kind of level and basis, because that 55-gallon drum is really super important to your business and you want to manage that very exquisitely carefully. But there's 50 other things around the outside that you can have a lower fidelity connection to, and it's still kind of doing its job right. So I think actually, if we're able to take hold of the term, because there is a problem where my wife works in fintech, right? In the fintech world, digital twin simply means an Ethereum token which proves your ownership of some digital art. Right? But if we can take ownership of that term, I think the concept that we've defined for digital twin now is actually a better answer than DX, because DX is big and fundamental and scary, whereas DT is incremental, and we can do some good things with that.
John, I wanted to come back to one of your points, which was no, digital twin does not have to be perfect.
Not anymore. That's an old belief.
You don't have to know where the big pipe is going through. What you need is your floors, your rooms, some equipment. Some will start with HVAC, some will start with a fire prevention, because you have to update your evacuation plans, and then they'll go to security to position the cameras, and the sensors. If you just do those digital twins, while you're far ahead than anybody else. No,
I completely agree. That was an old belief of mine, but I think we are now at that position, as you say, that we can do that.
And that's the same approach we're taking, is very incremental. Some things could just be spatial, some could be spatial with key assets. We're also integrating in scans, like scan views, like Matterport scans. So if you've got a complex space like a plant room or what have you, you can very quickly and easily, even with a phone, right, and go in and scan that to get the visual fidelity, tag the assets, link those assets to data. And that also addresses the maintainability of the twin, right? If you model to a very low level of fidelity and rely on scans for visual fidelity, then it's easier to keep it up to date and avoid it becoming a legacy object.
So let me go back to Steve Fay and John. Steve asked the question, is it worth, so he asked the question, it's about words. Is it worth investing in quote unquote digital twin, or should we stick with the DX? John gave, I thought, an excellent answer to that. So my question to you, Steve, and stay with us on this, John, what's your response to John's response?
So the first part of his response, which said that digital transformation is disruptive, I think is actually why you do digital transformation. You are intentionally trying to disrupt to reduce cost and drive efficiency. So it's businesses do that very intentionally and very successfully. It's not just about putting the data on a computer as opposed to in a file folder on a piece of paper somewhere. So I've seen very successful digital twin implementations because people go through the process of recognizing what labor there could be saved and what client experience can be improved by digitizing the process. So it's worth the quote unquote sacrifice. So I disagree with that part of your argument, John.
No, hold on. Let me because I actually think you guys just said the same thing.
Yeah, that wasn't my argument. Was that's what should happen,
right?
But by and large, it is not what does happen. And so,
okay.
And so the question is, do we only then go and serve the very enlightened customers who happen to already be that far down the track? Or do we try to sweep up and encourage and enlighten and enable the many, many more businesses who are not yet that far down the track?
Right.
Now, I completely agree with you on the motivation. I would love to be there. I've just witnessed that it never happens.
Right. Okay. All right.
So stay with me on this.
You probably
Steve,
have more
you and John are
direct
in the same
experience
page.
than I do in that regard.
So you and John are in the same page, Steve,
Yep.
about it should be transformational, if you're going to call it that. Now,
Yeah.
the question is about words and marketing in a sense.
Yeah.
The second part of this is it worth investing in these two new words, digital twin? Yeah. John kind of got me to, I think so, if it's created right, because I was back where you are. Let's stick with digital transformation. So what's your thought on his response about, man, I think I want to buy off on these two words?
So I like what John's saying because if you recall, I think, John, you're the one who defined, one of you did define that a digital twin basically is data that represents a physical thing, something physical, right? So that's what makes it a digital twin. So all the DDC building automation stuff that's been majority of my career is by that definition digital twin. Okay. So what you're essentially arguing for is it's just naturally something that can be done incrementally. We can just improve upon what we've already done, and there's the opportunity now to pull forward the original design of the building into the right from the start. So we don't have to recreate all that information because it's already sitting there in some CAD file that nobody bothered to take advantage of, and should only facilitate the jobs that the rest of us are attempting to do from an operational perspective. So it's a wonderful obvious next step to take in this digital twin journey we're on. Because we're on a journey. We're on the journey already. We just didn't know to call it that.
It's just a name.
Yeah.
Just a name.
And you just have to be smart about it.
So we're getting to the top of the hour, and maybe if I can give each of our guests like 30 seconds to closing comments. Maybe we'll go in reverse order. Start with you, John, and then Marty, and then Luis. And then we can wrap up.
So in response, I have a favorite kind of stock slide for presentations that I do. I did a presentation 8-9 years ago in the Tate Modern in London. If you sit on the gallery of the Tate Modern and you take a photograph to the south, you have within that single photograph building, transportation and city technology that goes from 1000 BC to the year 2010. And what you realize when you look at that, between St. Paul's Cathedral, the Thames Canal transit system, and everything else in between, is that the only way we can make real, effective, large-scale changes in the world is to do it incrementally. That means making it practical and adoptable. And that was the basis of my argument earlier. On my sort of direct interest, other than just sort of wanting to make the world a better place, the only thing I would say is we need to have interoperable standards for communication, for modeling, and for transfer of data, because if the world is going to run on data, then that data needs to be provided in at most 2 formats, right? You can have your leaded gas and you can have your unleaded gas, but if we have 28 different kinds of gas, And you have to get it from a hooky guy at the side of the road. It ain't gonna fly. So we've got to get the interoperability working.
Thanks, John. Marty?
All done.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, again, it's about, it's not so much necessarily visualization or one system or this system or the other, but it's really about integrating all of the existing systems. I try to take a pragmatic view, really understanding what's happening on the ground in the building, understanding the use cases for that specific operator, and really trying to achieve those. So that's kind of where I come from. Yeah.
Thanks, Marty. Louise, you have the last word.
Well, thank you. Well, I think it's going to be a perfect world when all systems connect to each other and speak the same language. So there you go.
And then we can have world domination. But not the way maybe we saw it before. Anyway, this has been a great conversation. Thank you very much to our guests, and thanks for attendees for being here, members. And YouTube will be up in the morning, and we shall see you next week on Monday Live. Thanks all. Bye bye.
Everyone.
Fabulous. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.